Alright, honestly, I think you guys saw this video coming. You simply cannot have a part 1 and a 2 and not have a part 3 when it's the magic of 3s. You know what I'm saying? In part 1 of our search for viennetta, we failed. In part 2, we succeeded, but also failed because viennetta itself was not that delicious. If I'm gonna be spending $8.79 on a small loaf of ice cream cake, I'm gonna make sure it tastes dang good. If you watched our review video, you know that our favorite part of eating that viennetta cake was the texture. So in order to duplicate and make better, perhaps, a viennetta cake from scratch at home, we're gonna need to melt and make some chocolate slivers. Sheets as thin as they can go so that we can sandwich it in between our ice cream. And speaking about ice cream, how do you make ice cream when you don't have an ice cream maker? Well, if you've got a little bit of patience and a little bit of time, you can make the Italian treat semifreddo. It is half cold and it is made out of eggs, sugar, and heavy cream. And that's it. If you want to add in flavorings, you certainly can. Because Aaron was lamenting that we couldn't find the mint chocolate version of viennetta, we're gonna make a peppermint version today with some peppermint extract. Now, I'm certainly not here to shit on your favorite treats. If you like viennetta cakes, great. I also like it. If it were just $1 or $2, I would love it. But for $8.79, it was just not that great of a deal. So I figured, why not get some chocolate, get some heavy cream, get some eggs, get a little bit of sugar, and make our own. Yes, it's gonna take time, but if you have time, this might be a really fun project, and it would be really interesting to see which version we like more. Chances are, my guess is we might like the viennetta more because it's processed. It's got lots of fluffy air whipped into that creaminess, and even though it doesn't have a strong flavor, that's kind of the appeal of a lot of industrial fast foods. Having said that, I'm still gonna try to make my own version because why not? First up, we're gonna prepare our chocolate sheets. Now I have this chocolate left over from testing for some recipes. Obviously you can use whatever kind of chocolate you want. White chocolate, but milk, dark, I'm guessing it'll all be fine. I know professionals temper their chocolates over a double boiler, but double boiler introduces the risk of water into your chocolate, which will for sure not help you temper it. So for the noob like me, I just like to microwave it in about 20 to 30 second increments until that chocolate is just barely totally melted. Go ahead and just break it into smaller chunks because this will make it easier for you to get all of those pieces completely melted as evenly as possible. Now, I'm not promising that I'm gonna temper chocolate properly, I'm not. I'm just trying to melt it as carefully as possible in the microwave. It's a lazy fucks cheat. As your chocolate begins to melt, make sure you are giving it a nice good stir in between each heating so that you don't have burnt bits on the bottom, okay? The bottom of your bowl will be the most heated part in the microwave, so you just wanna spread that heat as evenly as possible. As soon as it's mostly melted like this and you only have a few chunks left like that, stop heating it. All you have to do now is just keep stirring until the not melty parts gets as melty and smooth as the melty parts. Use a dry utensil like a rubber spatula and just go ahead and stir it slowly until it melts and folds into a smooth texture. That's it. You don't want to burn your chocolate, you don't want to overheat your chocolate. Be patient, be gentle, and be firm. Besides, the cooler your chocolate is when we freeze it, the faster it'll freeze. So really, you save on the electricity, you work in a little more arm power. Patience is a virtue and it will pay you in unburnt chocolate. Then we're going to smooth it into a thin, even flat sheet on parchment on a sheet tray and freeze it. For your unruly parchment, I just like to bend it the other way that it's curling and just let it set up for a minute or two and it should be a little bit flatter and easier to work with. We're just gonna go ahead and pour our melted chocolate straight on top, and then we're going to smooth it out with an offset spatula. If If you don't have an offset spatula, you can just tilt the tray until that chocolate runs off to one side and then to the other. Work with what you got. It won't make or break this homemade Viennetta. You will only be as disappointed as your expectations are high, so to avoid disappointment, keep your expectations low. I'm gonna try to make as neat a rectangle as I can, that way we can get the most even cuts across out of it. When you're done being a perfectionist, go ahead and slide it gently into your freezer. I need a bigger freezer, Aaron.
Okay, I'll buy you one.
Oh.
Link on Amazon.
When it comes to the original Viennetta, it's a pretty small cake. I'm not going to be doing any of the fancy piping work because I don't have fancy piping tips, and honestly it doesn't matter because, you know, it doesn't matter, guys. Nice shred of chocolate on top, nice layers of chocolate down the middle. That's what we're aiming for right there. 7 inches across, I would say, by about 3.5 inches, I would say. We've eaten some of it, so this is not entirely accurate. Now, I don't own a mini loaf pan with those dimensions. That's pretty tiny, so I found this Tupperware container, and it is, will you look at that, just about 3.5 inches by, well, a little bit short, 6 inches. But you'll forgive me, right? Again, make do with what you have. To ensure a nice clean release from our mold of sorts, we're gonna need to parchment this baby up. What I like to do is push my piece of parchment into the container, make a note of where the 4 corners of the containers are, and then make vertical slits down that 4 sides to meet those 4 corner marks. Then we're going to overlay the extra flaps in a hug next to each other so that you have very snug sides that fit inside that container with the parchment. Now that our chocolate is hardening and our container is lined, let's make the semifreddo mixture. Semifreddo is basically like a mousse. You're gonna whip your egg whites separately from the yolks. You're gonna be gradually adding sugar to both the yolk and the whites in separate bowls. And once they are both nice, fluffy, light, and very voluminous, you're going to combine them and you're gonna separately whip up some whipped cream and fold that into the mixture. Once all 3 bowls are together in one, that's your semifreddo base. All you have to do now is to portion it into your desired molds, freeze it, and enjoy it. I'm gonna be taking about 4 medium eggs and I'm gonna be separating out the whites and the yolks. You gotta make sure your whites, bowl, hands, utensils, everything is fat-free. Any single droplet or molecule of fat touching that egg white will ensure it not whipping up properly. This is why if you separate your eggs and your yolks break into your egg whites, you've got to start all over again. You can use that egg white for something else like an omelet, but you simply cannot expect it to just whip up perfectly. That fat really hinders that volume development, so be very careful. For the egg whites, you want to start your mixer on a medium-low speed, gradually work your speed up, and once all the whites have turned into that slightly voluminous, slightly shiny, slightly still wet meringue, start adding in your sugar and keep beating until those whites are more voluminous. We're not going for a super hard, stiff peak here, just like a medium hard peak. You want those whites to still have a bit of glisten to them, and you don't want them to be completely solid and set in their shape. I like to always whip my egg whites first, that way the beaters won't have any trace of egg yolks on them, just in case. We don't want that fat. For the yolks, we're gonna be beating them as well, gradually adding in the sugar, and we're looking for a very lightened, blonde, ribbony yolk mixture at the end of this. It should be thick, and that ribbon, when it falls into the bowl, should hold its shape for about 2.5–3 seconds. It'd be nice if I had 3 hands sometimes, you know? 1, 2, acceptable. I like to put both the yolk and the whites in the fridge while I whip up the cream because when usually you make desserts, all ingredients like to be about the same temperature as each other, so let's try to keep them all a little bit colder. When I'm whipping my whipped cream, not only am I going to add some peppermint extract, I'm also going to add a little bit of confectioner sugar, both for sweetness and also because there's a little bit of cornstarch in here that will help you stabilize a little bit of that whipped cream so that it doesn't weep right away. No exact measurements, just go with your gut instinct. If you like it sweeter, put a little bit more sugar. Just remember that all frozen treats, because of their cold temperature, will taste a little bit less flavorful and less sweet than you think they will. Heavy cream tends to splatter everywhere, including my lens, so I'm going to transfer it to the kitchen sink for a better splatter proof. Time for a taste test. You can adjust your flavorings here. If you think it needs a little more of something, mix it in now. Okay, hot tip right here, gifted to me by my previous pastry chef, Dyalla. She told me that whenever you're mixing something and you want to keep that air structure, you gotta use a huge bowl, okay? You want to make sure you have enough room to work the batter without the batter overflowing. This reduces the risk of you overfolding it, losing all that air structure, blah, blah, blah. So now we have a big bowl. We're going to add in our egg yolk mixture first. Then we're gonna add a little bit of our egg whites, just a tad, just to lighten that first batter first. The first round is kind of like your sacrificial round. You don't really care about maintaining the air structure so much in these batch of egg whites as you do about using them to lighten up your egg yolk mixture. This will make it easier for the rest of your egg whites to be incorporated without much of a struggle. Once it's mostly worked in, go ahead, drop in the rest of your egg whites. Just keep going around the bowl. Every now and then, go down the middle, cut across, fold it over, incorporate that egg white gently. You don't want to ruin all of your hard work. You want to synthesize them. Once it's mostly incorporated like this and you see some that are like maybe a quarter big of egg whites, stop and start folding in your whipped cream. You can give your bowl a turn if you'd like every now and then. That'll help your motion to incorporate as well. That looks good to me. You don't want to be too perfectionistic about this, because you definitely want to avoid over whipping that heavy cream and you want to keep that air structure in that meringue. Back to the fridge. Chocolate time. Now, that is thin. I'm gonna try to measure about 3 inches across by 6 inches across. We don't have to be too perfectionistic because the chocolate will inevitably crack anyway, but just try to guide it along those dimensions. A layer of semifreddo in first. Go ahead and try to smooth it out a little bit. We're going to sink in a layer of chocolate deep within. Add in a little more semifreddo to cover, and another layer of chocolate down the middle. Just going to repeat that process until we got all of that tall stack covered. Broken pieces of chocolate, Not to worry, just piece them together as best as you can. You're the one eating this after all. The disclaimer here is obviously if you can't have raw uncooked eggs and you are immunocompromised, probably don't have semifreddo. Otherwise, I think semifreddo is a perfect substitute for something that's so light and airy. The structure of semifreddo, when done right, is kind of like a frozen mousse. So, fingers crossed. We're not gonna do any special piping. I'm just gonna break the chocolate pieces up and we'll just decorate our border with it because why not? Going for a modern look here. We ended up making a super tall cake and we're gonna pop this into the freezer ASAP so that it can freeze, and I'll check back in with you tomorrow to see how it tastes. I need a bigger freezer.
I know our freezer is packed.
All right, y'all, enough time has elapsed. Let's take a look at what our semifreddo has turned into overnight in the freezer. Feels solid, but I don't know what the texture is gonna be like. Aaron, do you wanna come and take a look?
Hi, James.
Hi, look.
Did you make viennetta?
Well, I tried.
Okay. I can see it sort of. Yeah, I can see it.
We're not going for the look here. Let's taste it.
Yes, this is about taste. How did you make this without an ice cream maker?
I used a non-churn recipe. Slice is harder than the viennetta, right? From the store
Yeah.
bought.
Ooh, okay, that's an interesting looking middle. That looks pretty close.
Okay, time to eat.
This is mint though, so I already know I'm gonna like it better than the original.
Okay.
I like it better than the original.
How's the texture?
Let me see. Just a plain ice cream bite. It's got like micro crystals.
Yes. I didn't make it perfectly.
Mm-hmm. The texture I would say is actually comparable. The real viennetta is airy, and so is this one. I don't know if you were trying to replicate that, but you did. The flavor, however, is a lot better here. It doesn't taste chemically or processed or factory made. It just tastes natural and good. And with that light mint flavor, it's a lot better flavor.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to try a slice of the OG side by side?
Sure.
Let's do it. To the left. First of all, let's compare the sizes.
Yours looks like it was made with actual cream because it has that little bit of yellow hue.
Yeah, the butter.
This looks bleached.
Yum. I think mine has more chocolate too, no?
It does. Which do you think looks more appetizing, June?
The viennetta looks more appetizing, honestly. The
Why?
texture is a lot finer. It's a lot smoother looking. And I think people like white. You know, whiteness wins in our world.
This is a very boring flavor, though. I think that's what we both said when we tasted it, is the ice cream part pretty much tastes like nothing.
Yeah.
It's just like whipped air, frozen dairy dessert. It's really only when you have a bite with the chocolate too? Does it sort of become anything you like particularly care about eating? Whereas this, every aspect of yours is tasty.
Even the plain semifreddo?
Yeah.
I guess because it's pepperminty, huh?
Yeah. And it's creamier. It tastes like real, actual ice cream.
Amazing. So it has more of a dairy taste to it.
Yeah. Yours easily wins. No doubt. There's the color right next to each other. Very impressive how close you got with the layers. I keep tasting the Viennetta, the original one, hoping that when I take a bite, there'll be something there that like is interesting, but there isn't.
It's pretty, but no substance, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely see what Aaron was saying about the micro shardiness, but I don't actually taste it. The mouthfeel is pretty smooth. I'm already eating the semi-melted version, so it tastes pretty smooth to me when it melts. That pepperminty flavor, so good. It balances out the bitter sweetness of that dark chocolate, that cloying sweetness from the dairy portion, and it just uplifts you into another kind of floaty flavor dimension. I think I did pretty good on the layering of the chocolate too. I mean, not bad, June. As we can see, it is melting like ice cream. Very lickable. All right. Time for a bite of the OG. You definitely don't smell much of anything. And after tasting that pepperminty one, this truly just tastes a little bit like unflavored meringue.
Yeah. Not much going on.
There's very intriguing, very ethereally, lightly flavored ocean foam melting into my mouth. But even when I eat the melted semifreddo, there's more substance there. I think I want another bite. Another bite of Viennetta. And whatever you want to call this. Ooh, salt makes that flavor even more interesting. What I find really interesting is that the original Viennetta doesn't actually use cream. It uses skim milk. And all the fat is coming from coconut oil, which I don't even taste the coconutiness in the coconut oil. So it must be a super refined coconut oil. In which case, I don't understand why it costs almost $9 for a log of that if there's no dairy fat in here. I will say that my homemade version has a lot more thick chocolate layers in it, and the store-bought version has thin, crackly chocolate in it. I like both versions a lot. I think my conclusion is if you can access the Viennetta cake for only €2, do it, but keep your hopes low. If you want to try your hand at making a homemade version, well, you know what to do now.